before we give you guys the entire 2024 schedule for your Minnesota Vikings, I want you guys to get your record predictions down there in the chat. Predict the Vikings record for me down below. I want to see what you guys have to say. And before we also dive into it, I want to give a big time shout out to today's presenting sponsor, and that is Game Time. If you guys download the Game Time app and use promo code ChatSports when you are making your first purchase, we're going to hook you guys up with $20 off. Terms apply for first purchase only. Use promo code ChatSports. We'll hook you guys up with $20 off. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and the full 2024 schedule is here for your Minnesota Vikings, and it is a juicy one, no doubt. And let's just get right into it. The season opener for the Minnesota Vikings will be a revenge game from the 2022 wildcard weekend round against the New York Giants in New York, and then the Vikings home opener versus the San Francisco 49ers in Week 2. And then Stefon Diggs and the Houston Texans make their first appearance in Minnesota in Week 3. And then that game against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay Week 4. Man, that one's going to be a good one. But, hey, I'm super excited to look forward to this game as well. And then in Week 5, the Vikings are playing in London versus Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. A little also Sam Darnold revenge game if he is the quarterback that is starting at the time for Minnesota. Then we kick it to Week 6. The Vikings do have an earlier bye this week. I always prefer the byes later in the season, but hey, Vikings get it early here in Week 6 after a pretty tough start to the schedule for Minnesota. And then Week 7, we kick it to the Detroit Lions at home, which is going to be another big-time matchup for Minnesota. Week 8, Thursday night football. They're traveling to Los Angeles to take on Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and the Los Angeles Rams. So I thought they had a great offseason. That is going to be a wagon of a football team over there in Los Angeles. And then we kick it to the rest of the schedule here. Week 9 versus Indianapolis Colts. We got a little run here of AFC South opponents. Week 10, the Vikings do head down to Florida and take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then they go to Tennessee Week 11 against the Tennessee Titans. 3 straight road games here with Week 12 being at the Bears. Still to be determined on the home and away games for the Bears. But as we know right now, this will be a road game in Chicago in Week 12. And then also Week 13, the Vikings will be taking on Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray, and the Arizona Cardinals at home. Super excited to see Maserati Marv, see what he can do in the National Football League. But then the Kirk Cousins return game will be Week 14. And I think they put this game later on in the year, hoping J.J. McCarthy is the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, which would be pretty cool if you could see Kirk square off with the Vikings replacement for him. And then Week 15, Monday Night Football versus the Chicago Bears. It's every single year they put Vikings-Bears on primetime, and those games are always gritty. They're low-scoring. Even if the Vikings and Bears have the top 2 highest-scoring offenses in the league, I guarantee you that game will be damn near 15-12. But then they kick it to the Seattle Seahawks in Week 16 on the road, and then you finish up the schedule with the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions. I'll be going more in depth on each of these games here in a second, but I got to make sure you guys are first subscribed here to the channel. We are closing in on 25.3 thousand subs. We just need 25 of you guys. So if this is your first time coming across our channel here, please help us out. Hit that subscribe button. Lock us in as your go-to Vikings YouTube channel. So let's go a little more in depth here on each game. So Week 1, the Vikings do start off at New York. Assuming that's going to be Daniel Jones, the starting quarterback for the New York Giants, and I'm also assuming Sam Darnold will be the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. But I think this is a very winnable game. I like having, obviously the Giants in Week 1 comparison to, if you got to square off with the San Francisco 49ers in Week 2. That's going to be a wagon of a team coming in here following the Super Bowl loss. Hopefully we get the Niners, maybe a little Super Bowl hangover, and they're not as locked in as they normally would be in September. But I love that Week 2 matchup with San Fran, but this is a game I'm super excited to watch. Stefon Diggs coming home to Minnesota for the first time since he was traded away multiple off seasons ago. Diggs is going to be fired up for that game. Texans are a young and up-and-coming team. Also, Danielle Hunter returning to Minnesota for the first time. I was curious if they would have put that on a primetime game, but they obviously chose not to. And, hey, Texans coming home with 2 revenge games possibly for them. But then the game, Week 4, first divisional opponent for the Minnesota Vikings. You're squaring off with the Green Bay Packers. Week 4 in Lambeau. That's going to be a big-time game for Minnesota. And the Packers had a great year last year. They went 9-8, beat the Cowboys in the wild card weekend round, then did lose to the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional. But this would be a big-time matchup for the Vikes, considering they do have a tougher schedule to start off this year. I hate calling a game a must-win this early, looking at it. But I think this would be a very, very important game for the Vikings. But you guys let me know who you got in this matchup. Green Bay, Minnesota, Week 4. Give me an MIN for the Minnesota Vikings, or give me a GB for the Green Bay Packers. Let's kick it to the Week 5 London game. I wish we had Aaron Rodgers at home coming back to US Bank Stadium, even though he has been ultra successful playing on the road versus the Vikings in the past. But I like this game. It's going to be at 9:30 in the morning. It's going to be a really fun one. So, Jets, Vikings, London. I wish I could make it out there to a game, across the pond. But that's going to be a super fun matchup to keep your eyes out on. Again, earlier bye this year for the Vikings. I had it later on in the season last year. But a Week 6 bye, which, I don't necessarily hate, but I always prefer having the bye week on the second half of the season. But then another divisional opponent, the Detroit Lions, after they did sign up, or they did extend their big three of Penei Sewell, Jared Goff. They locked all those guys up. So the Vikings will be taking on them in Week 7 here. And it's going to be another big-time game versus the Detroit Lions. But then it's going to be a short week following the Lions game at home. They are going to be taking on the Los Angeles Rams in Week 8, Thursday Night Football in Los Angeles. I'm super excited for this game, mainly because I think the Rams are going to be a wagon of a football team. And also, if you guys do want to get tickets for this matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams, we will have you guys hooked up with Game Time. So this is going to be the Game Time featured matchup for us on today's show. And if you guys download the Game Time app and use promo code CHATSPORTS, we will hook you guys up with $20 off. If you're trying to take a trip out to the West Coast and go see Los Angeles, make sure you guys do download the Game Time app and use promo code ChatSports. Terms apply, and it is only on your first purchase. But hey, even if you guys want to go maybe see a Minnesota Timberwolves game with them still in the playoffs with Game 6 Thursday night, a must-win game for the Minnesota Timberwolves, you guys can also use the Game Time app to get a ticket to that matchup. So first purchase only, use that promo code ChatSports. We are going to hook you guys up with $20 off. And my favorite feature of the Game Time app, you guys can see the view from your seat before you buy the ticket. And man, I would love to make a trip out there to go see the Vikings take on the Los Angeles Rams. Hopefully it's a matchup of two good football teams at the time. But if you guys are trying to go out there, see the Vikes take on the Rams, make sure you guys do download the Game Time app. Use promo code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I'll put that link for you guys in the comment section and description of today's show. Let's carry on here with the schedule. They're going to be taking on the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson in Week 9. And I'm a big fan of Anthony Richardson. A clip went semi-viral of him throwing the ball at minicamp this past week, and he looks good. So maybe he is another franchise quarterback that the Vikings are taking on. But then it's another AFC South opponent. They're going to be going down to Florida and taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. Probably expect him to be extended before the season does begin, but that's going to be a big-time game. Again, this schedule for the Vikings is extremely, extremely tough. Then you take on the Tennessee Titans in Week 11, where they completely loaded up the receiver room this offseason, bringing in Calvin Ridley. They drafted Olu Fashanu in the first round to bolster up that offensive line. It seems like they're going all in on Will Levis, so that'll be a very interesting matchup to see what they have cooking there in Tennessee. And then Week 12 versus the Chicago Bears. Again, right now it does have this as the road game, and then Week 15 the home game for the Bears. But again, nothing is totally 100% confirmed right now, but this is what we're working with. So Week 12 in Chicago, it's probably going to be a cold one. And again, those Bears-Vikings games are always low-scoring, no matter how good those offenses are. But then Week 13, taking on the Arizona Cardinals at home. I mean, that should be a win for the Minnesota Vikings. I know the Cardinals made some good moves this offseason, but, I would assume Vikes get a victory then. But then Week 14, if I had to circle probably, I would probably say it's the game I'm looking forward to the most. Obviously, I love the Packers games as well, and I'm also extremely interested in that Rams game. But Kirk Cousins making his return. I've said I want J.J. McCarthy to sit the entire year one and just kind of develop his game. But could you imagine if it's J.J. McCarthy squaring off with Kirk Cousins versus the Atlanta Falcons? That would be must-watch TV, in my opinion. And then this is the Monday Night Football game for the Minnesota Vikings, taking on the Chicago Bears at home. So 2 big games at home in Week 14 and Week 15 for Minnesota. It's going to be fun to just watch Caleb Williams and just that new look Bears offense as they have completely pivoted to where the NFL is, trending, and they look like to be a good team. But then the Vikings go to Seattle in Week 16 as, we had a stretch for about a couple years where the Vikings played 3 straight years in Seattle, took last year off, obviously, but then we're back over there on the West Coast taking on the Seahawks and the 12s with Geno Smith and the boys. So see if the Vikings can get a victory in that game, but it's always tough playing over there in Seattle. Then the Vikings do end the season with 2 divisional opponents, taking on the Green Bay Packers at home for the second time this season. Obviously, though, in those games, I always get up for those. And then they close the season out, Week 18 at the Lions. Maybe that's for the NFC North if this season goes extremely well for the Vikings. Who knows? But, again, just overall, looking at this Viking schedule, man, it is tough. Trace, before we get to this, are you cool with me? I just want to see, all 18 games real quick because it is a brutal schedule for the Vikings. I mean, just looking at the first 8 games, besides the Giants, I could see all of these teams in the playoffs. Niners, they'll be there. Texans will be there. Packers are always a good team. Jets, they are going to be good this season as well. Then you got the Lions and the Rams. The Vikings, I mean, you cannot chalk up any of these games as a guaranteed victory. And then you do kind of go through an easier stretch between weeks 9 and 16, but you still are playing the Bears twice. And if they're a good football team, those are going to be tough matchups. But I like the AFC South stretch from weeks 9 through 11, but 2 of those games are on the road. And then, you get the Cardinals at home, but what if Kyler Murray and Maserati Marv have a great 1-2 punch? That could be a tough matchup as well. Overall, I think the Vikings have a very, very tough schedule this season, and it's just going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But we started off today's show asking you guys to predict the record for me down below in the comments section. I want you guys to close today's show with predicting the record for me. As I look at it right now, I'm going to go, normally I always have the Vikings winning at least 10-plus games. That's just the optimistic fan I am. But, looking at the schedule, I could see a 7-10 season heading for Minnesota, but this is a building block year. We're not trying to win the Super Bowl this year. We're trying to win it, in a couple years from now when JJ's still on his rookie contract. You guys let me know. Predict the Vikings record for me down below in the comments section. And we'll see you guys next time. SKOL Vikes.